All right. Hello and welcome. SQL Dev DBA here, and this is a bit of all my streams, or most of my streams, are unscheduled streams anyway, but this one's a bit more unscheduled than usual because I just finished filming a video on how to add Formula One radio sounds to a app that I use called Crew Chief. Crew Chief is an app that allows you to get basically a spotter and a race engineer for your sim racing, and I wanted to add a little bit of immersion for F1, so I got the F1 radio noise and I've updated all the radio noises there to sound like the F1 beep. So just finished recording one there, and I also have basically a completely new setup with OBS. I've been saying that I'm going to switch over to OBS maybe for about a year now, and I finally did it. I finally switched over, and I'm quite happy so far. Hopefully everything keeps going well, but so far I'm pretty happy with everything and how it's turning out. I do have to check the audio levels and everything, but so far it's fine. I also got a different sort of camera setup. So I have the standard camera, which is the teleprompter, which is the one I'm pointing at, and it's where the chat is at as well. And I added that one over there, which I'm pointing to now, and that one is just an iPod Touch that I'm using, the Elgato I think it's called Epoch Cam. And so that one allows me to just have a wireless iPod Touch or an iPhone if I want to, or an iPad, and use that as the camera instead, so that I can just give a different angle. Here you can see the setup that I have in my streaming room. And yes, that F1 car outline is perfectly straight. I'm the one that's like super reclined, which is why I look a little bit weird. It's because this sim racing rig is in F1 position. It's the next level racing, FGT, I believe it's called. And it's currently in F1 position, which means I'm super reclined. My knees are basically level with my chest, so it's supposed to add a little bit of immersion. And it's supposed to be more comfortable. I don't think it's very comfortable, and I actually swapped out the chair for a completely different seat, like a race seat that allows me to put my harnesses on and everything when I finally go to motion, when I finally make this a motion rig. But the reality is, I'm not sure I'm going to keep this thing. It's basically the same price as a aluminum profile rig, but it has none of the benefits. And so I wish I had better things to say about it, but it really has not been worth the money. So yeah. And then you can see my triple monitors right around here, my left one, the middle one, and the right one, so I'm able to use my triples while I'm racing and see cars beside me. It's the next best thing to VR, I would say. VR is probably the best experience you'll have, but the problem with VR is that the headset is a little bit heavy, so it droops down, even though I have a really good strap that helps me out. And the reality is, it gets really hot inside the VR headset, and if you're really not used to VR like I am, or like anyone who uses VR a lot is, it'll be very exhausting for your eyes, very exhausting for really your brain to try to process everything that's going on. So sim racing is probably not the best thing to start VR with. It's probably simpler games, but yeah. So the triples really help out a lot, and that's what I've been using as an alternative to VR for quite a while. Also, I have vertigo, and vertigo sometimes flares up for like 2 or 3 days, so it's not a lot of fun when that happens. So again, why am I streaming today? First of all, I just finished recording a video, and I'm still here in this chair where I was recording it. That video will probably come out sometime tomorrow, but it's about sim racing. It's not about data at all. I'm here, and I wanna just test out lots of stuff with my new setup. That camera over there, the standard camera, which is this one here. I want to set that up, make sure that OBS is working well, but I also want to answer a question, or really just dive into an interview question that I read on Reddit 2 or 3 days ago. And the question was basically, someone was in either an interview or a class, and what they were given was a bunch of select statements. Someone gave them a lot of select statements in SQL, and the request from that person was the exercise was to create a layout or a schematic of all of the tables in that database based on the select statements. Now, I've been part of data interviews for about 13 years now. I've held interviews myself for about 5 or 6 years now. About 6 years now. And that question, I hate to say, has never popped into my head. I like to think that my interviews are a good experience for the interviewee because of the fact that I treat the interview as almost like a co-working project. We basically have a start to finish experience where I give them data to load, they load it, and we all talk through how the loading process happens. And I let them choose whatever method they want to load the data into SQL Server. And then I have them prepare a view, a stored procedure, all to be consumed by either Power BI, SQL Server reporting services, or any other reporting platform. And I like to think that it's been a good experience for interviewees. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks because basically it's just a day at work. It's just, here's your first project. I don't want to make them work too hard, especially when you hear these horror stories about folks who get asked to do projects and then they just take the source code. The company just takes the source code and runs and never says anything, and basically the person worked for free. I'm not trying to provide that type of experience. I'm just trying to provide an experience where the person, if they know how to ride this bicycle, then they can just hop on the bicycle and forget about the stresses of interviews. We can just have a conversation. We can just basically talk through the exercise. But this exercise is a little bit different. This is reverse engineering SQL queries to try to extract or try to come up with a table structure. And I thought it was really interesting. And it's likely something I'll incorporate into my future interviews, but I wanted to walk through the process with you. And I'll probably end up recording this as a separate session or something like that. If you're seeing this on YouTube, that means I decided not to do that because this one went pretty well. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully my OBS stays put and stays okay. But let's hop into it. I'm going to go ahead and switch to this view here. And here you can see that I have Bing Chat open. Now, I go back and forth between Bing Chat and ChatGPT. I have the ChatGPT premium subscription, but the reality is I haven't really found anything too crazy that ChatGPT can do and Bing Chat can't. I think I have to coerce Bing Chat a little bit more than I do ChatGPT. When I'm asking for very, very important advice or very important metrics, something like that, I'll usually go to ChatGPT. But I like to allow folks to experience or watch me experience free tools. So ChatGPT, or at least the paid version, is not free, but Bing Chat, for the most part, is. I don't even have the premium one, so I like to use free tools to make sure you understand that you can use free tools too. So what have I done here? I've basically asked ChatGPT to create, well, let's read the prompt together. I said please, because robots, world domination, etc. I want to be the person that they remember said please create 5 to 10 SQL Server select statements with multiple columns using multiple tables and joins. I want to use these select statements to try to map out the tables and relationships without knowing the structure or relationships beforehand. please do not give me any information on the tables. That part's really critical because I asked it once, like, hey, can you do this? And it was like, yeah, here's the table structure, here's all the columns. I was like, yeah, that doesn't work. That's not how this question would work. So I have to be very specific and say, please do not give me any information on the tables, only write out the SQL queries. Please make sure the tables and columns have real names. That's another important part, trial and error, because the first time I ran this, it decided to just give me table 1, table 2, table 3, and that's really not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a real life experience here. Please make sure the table names and columns have real names, using names that would be found in the hotel industry. That last part you can change, right? You can change anything about this. The 5 to 10 queries. If you want more than that, that's absolutely fine. If you want it to have 10 to 15 tables, that's absolutely fine as well. If you want it to be a different industry, you can do that too. I'm going to go ahead and paste this prompt into the chat, and anyone who's watching this, you can go ahead and copy that, put it into Bing Chat yourself. It's chat.bing.com, and you'll be able to get similar results. It always kind of gives you a little bit of a different experience, but here are the queries it gave me. It gave me about 10 queries. Here they are. Each one of them with selects. I have real columns here. I have real tables. I have real joins. All of these can be used to try to determine a table structure or table schema, database schema, whatever you want to call it. What I like to do is I like to build entity relationship diagrams. Now, my tool of choice happens to be Lucidchart. Lucidchart.com is the website for it. And they have a free version of this tool. Again, I have the paid version, but the free version allows you to, I think, create about 40 objects on one diagram. And that should be plenty for the exercise that we're going to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And basically what I'm going to do is take each one of these statements and I'm going to use it to build a table structure for the table or tables that are shown in the select statement. So I'm going to take this one. How do we want to do this? Off to the side, maybe? Let's see if I can drag this guy out. I was going to play some GeoGuessr, but I don't want to waste any of your time. Maybe we can do it to just take a little bit of a break later on. Let's go ahead and position our browsers just like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a brand new diagram here at the top left, and it's just going to be a blank document. And here on the right, I have my SQL query. I can use one of the many templates it has, including, where is it? Database or data. They have like ERDs like this. I can go ahead and insert this, and basically I'll get a template of different tables. Now, obviously these tables are not what I'm looking for, so I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to go ahead and copy them. And so I'll copy one, paste it down here, and then we'll work with this one. Okay, so the first table I see here on the right in the guests area, or sorry, in the guest query is from guest. That's one of the primary tables. If you're thinking the hotel industry, you're thinking guest, you're thinking customer, that sort of thing. So we'll name this table guest. And here it has the alias G. Guest, sometimes in SQL Server, you'll see guest as G to determine the alias or to signify the alias. Right here, they're not using the as. So inherently, I just know that this is the alias G for the table guest. Now, up at the top, I see a few columns with G preceding them with a G prefix. This is G guest ID, G guest name, or first name, G last name, etc. And so here I know that these are columns that are guest columns. I'll go ahead and start adding them to this. And here I'll just double click and add guest underscore ID. I'm not a huge fan of underscores, at least not in SQL Server. In Oracle, yes, because everything's pretty much uppercase in Oracle or lowercase. But we'll go ahead and do it just for the sake of having this be correct. or have it match the data that they asked us to do. Okay, so second column is going to be first name. The third column is going to be last name. And now we're at the point where we need more columns. So I'm going to go ahead and add these columns here. And now we have a couple extra fields to work with just in case. The first one, second one, and third one were all in. Here we have R columns. These don't have a G prefix, they have an R prefix. And that comes from the reservations table. Now the reservations table is one that the reservations are held in, but it's a completely different table, and we can go ahead and create that table as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy the guest table and paste it, just using standard Control C, Control V. I'm gonna rename this from guest to reservation, or reservations with S, and this one as well. This one has S. That's not super important, but if this is an interview question you're facing, you're going to want to make sure you have as many things correct as possible. That'll give you a few boost points for the stuff you might get wrong. All right, so the first column I have is reservation ID. I can actually just copy it and paste it here, but then I'll have to change the capitalization, or maybe I can just leave that alone. Depends on how much time you have, really. Let's just go ahead and do it without. I have the check-in date and I have the check-out date for that reservation. Now, for some reason, it decided it was going to mark these bold. So let me see if I can unbold them. No, I can't. So we'll just leave it that way and you'll pretend that that's how it's been the whole time. Oh, I guess we can just bold everything. Cool. Oh, it's just one is 8 and one is 10. Okay, so let's just change the font size down to 8. Is that even working? No, and I'm wasting your time. So let's keep going here. Reservations joins to guests on the guest ID. And notice, this is an interesting thing. Notice that I can't just rely on the select statement to show me which columns should be on the tables. This is actually something I had to ask Bing Chat to do for me last time I asked this earlier this week. I had to tell it, hey, can you please hide some columns from the select statement so that I have to infer what those columns are from the join. And it looks like this time it already did that. So guest ID on the reservation is not showing anywhere here in the select statement, but it is showing in the join, which means this is a column that exists on the reservations table. And not only that, here I can show my first relationship. I can say guest ID joins to guest ID here. And you'll notice that these crow's feet, what are called crow's feet in entity relationship diagrams, or ERDs, are now showing. This is a one-to-many relationship here. I don't like to confuse folks, and so far in my career, unless it's a perfectly spec'd document that an architect would need to use, most of the time I'm the architect, that someone would need to use to show the exact relationships and develop constraints and foreign keys and all sorts of stuff like that. Unless that's the case, I go ahead and just turn those off. What do I mean by turn those off? I click on the line, I go to more, and I just turn off crow's feet. I say none. Why? Because it just overcomplicates things unless it's absolutely needed. You can absolutely look up crow's foot notation and do it the right way, especially for an interview. You might want to show your knowledge. The problem I've seen is sometimes we make assumptions about crow's foot notation or the relationships in tables, and you get them wrong. If you make no assumptions whatsoever, then those assumptions can't be wrong. So that's a little tip, is unless you're explicitly asked for crow's foot notation, you can just avoid it and then write a note saying, I didn't use crow's foot notation because I didn't want to make any incorrect assumptions. Or if you feel confident enough to just go ahead and do it, by all means, if you're aware of the many to many, one to many, one or many, zero or many. Those are all very, very complicated. As you can see here, when I open up the menu, they get quite complicated. So here I have 0 or 1. I have 0 or many. I have 1 or many. All of them are, they get increasingly complicated. So I would just avoid them altogether, unless you're requested to. All right, so that's all we could do for the first query. Let's look at the second query. That's reservations. We already know reservation here, but we have reservation ID. That's good. We have the check-in date. We have the checkout date. And what else do we have? Let's look for anything in this query that'll get us what we need. Here, in this join, we see that reservations joins to room on the reservation r dot reservation room ID. So that's definitely another column in reservations. It's the room underscore ID. But we also have a brand new table, and that's called rooms. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab another sample. And if I want, what I can do is just say, here's a blank table that I could just keep using so I don't have to keep deleting stuff. So I'll just go ahead and use that blank table. Now, the next table is called rooms. So I'm going to go ahead and add rooms. And then I have a room ID. I'm going to try to keep what I believe to be the key or the primary key. I'm going to try to keep it up at the very top. Now, there's different forms of entity shapes. For example, this one here has 2 columns, and you can designate what type of key it is here, like that. And here, I know none of these are keys, except for the ones that join to other tables, and the one that's primary to this table. So here I can say PK for primary key. For reservations, and maybe not reservation detail, I can expect there to be only one record per reservation. And so I'm going to, again, assume that this reservation ID is the primary key. You may be shooting yourself in the foot here by making these assumptions, and that's why I try to keep things as simple as possible and not add too much detail. I understand you may be wanting to impress your interviewer, but it might backfire on you, so just be careful when doing that. There's also another table style, which is this triple one, or actually 2 more. There's a double column like this, and this is what I would prefer to use. Instead of the key ones, I'd prefer to use the types. So we're actually going to change all of these to types to this type, 2 wide columns. You can also just use the triple, which has the key indicator, the column name, and the data type, but I'm just going to keep it as simple as I can and just do the double. Let's change this one as well to a double. That's a triple. That's the wrong double. This is the right one. Okay. And so here, let's go back to this table and say guest ID. The reality is I don't know. I can assume that first name is going to be an nvarchar. Let's call it 100 just because I like to play it safe. I'm hoping that no first name is larger than 100 characters, but that might be the case. So at least nvarchar 100. If you're in Oracle, that would be a varchar 2 of 100. Guest ID, I'm going to leave it as type because I'm not 100% sure what it is. Same thing here. I'm just going to leave it as type. Now, check-in date. Yes, it would be a date in, let's say, something like Oracle, but a date in Oracle stores the time with it. A date in SQL Server and sometimes other database platforms does not store the time with it, so I would say this would be at least a date time. Now, date time has 3 digits after the second, which means it goes to the millisecond. I can't imagine date time 2 would be needed, which goes to the micro or nano. I think microsecond. can't imagine that would be needed. That's something more for like the Formula One stuff I do, right? Sim racing telemetry, where I checked milliseconds. Maybe that's when I would need it. But for these times, I think we're okay with just knowing the time. Reservation ID, again, not 100% sure. I would assume that it's some sort of digit. But as someone who has worked in the hotel industry, I know that the reservation IDs we used were not just digits. They had a prefix depending on various things. So I'm going to leave that as a type for now and see if the other queries help me discover what's going on. And the third one is the rooms. So we have our room ID. Again, we don't know the type, and RM is the prefix of the room. So let's look for any RM columns. Here's the room number. So we'll add that room number and also the room type. Now, since we have those, I can also create a relationship between room ID here. Let's see if we can get rid of this guy. Can we do that? Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit more space. So between this one and this one, oh, looks like I changed the name wrong here. Reservations. Between this one and this one, I know from this join here that we have rooms joins to reservations on the room ID. So I'm going to find the room ID here. I'm going to find the room ID here and join them together. And then I'll remove the crow's feet. If you're feeling confident, you can leave it in. No problem. I just don't want to make any incorrect assumptions, as I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and move this line here and just make it a little bit better for space because we are running out of it. But the good thing about these diagrams is that I can actually zoom out and just move around and then zoom back in. I just want to make sure that you can see it correctly, and that's why I'm so far zoomed in right now. All right. So let's not be done with this second query yet. Here we can see a where clause on reservation ID. Now, something interesting about this where clause is that this 1, 2, 3 does not have any single quotes around it. If the designer of this query, if the author of this query designed it correctly and designed it in what's called sargeable or search argumentable, then they will have used the correct data type here. And the reality is this column, reservation ID, should be at least an integer. Let's say I'm a very successful hotel company and I have lots of reservations. That would give me big int to use. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a big int. And if they ask me, I'll say, well, I saw your where clause has an integer without strings. And I said to myself, if they wrote that correctly, if they wrote that you don't want to insult them, kind of like the whole, I assumed you wrote it in a sargeable manner. And so I determined that it would be a big int because I assumed that you would have lots of reservations. That's assuming still, but it's assuming in a positive way, I would say. So I would be I would be impressed with an assumption like that from someone who's interviewing. This is something that would impress me as someone who interviews quite a bit. All right, next. We're only 3 queries in and we have 3 tables already. We have relationships and we have some data types. This is going pretty well, I would say. All right, next is just a simple room types. It's just room types. That's all it is. One table, nothing else, right? But what I can determine is that this room types is an extension of the rooms table. So I'm going to go ahead and create another table. I'm going to go ahead and switch this one to be a double and switch this one to be a double, just so it's easier. All right, so here we have room type. But if you look, it's just room type. There's no room type ID. So even though this is a good hint, I'm not 100% sure if there's a room type ID. Or we just made to assume that room type will join to room type when everything else has been on the guest ID, room ID, reservation ID, etc. So that's something to be very careful about. You don't want to make too many assumptions too quickly. We can just leave that. Or if you're at the end and you're like, oh man, I just don't know, you can try at least creating it and then removing the crow's feet. And also making the line either dotted like this, or maybe dashed like that. Maybe even changing the color of the line as like a I'm not sure, and then you'd be able to maybe write a post-it note or something like that. Let's see if we can find a post-it note, shapes panel, and say here I can point something to it, and I can say not sure about room type relationship or data type. And you can even add like a description about why that is. It's possible that it's for many different reasons. Your reasons may vary, so that's something that you'll know on your own. Morse 314, it's great to see you. How are you doing? Hope you're really well. Morse 314 says, can I just say this is a wonderful exercise in data architecture and engineering. I'm looking forward to trying this myself. I thought the same exact thing. In fact, I left the Redditor who posted it a comment saying, I've never thought about something like this. We're all just so used to having schemas and then creating queries, right? Like I've been at this for 13 years and I've never encountered something like this in all the interviews I've been in and all the interviews I've hosted. It's impressive. It's impressive, and it's really cool. I'm very excited about this method. Morse 314 says learning can be a game with large language models. Yes, absolutely. AI has made it possible for so many exercises like this to happen. And the reality is you don't have to think about it yourself, right? I just typed in a very nice prompt. I said, please, and it gave me 10 queries. In fact, I could probably ask it, hey, give me 10 more. I'm not done. And it would just continue to power through this stuff as it desires. So that's really cool. I'm very happy to have found this, and I'm very thankful for the Redditor to post it as well. All right, so room type. Again, we have a on again, off again relationship. We're not really sure if these two tables are joined by this. We're not really sure if this is an identifier or an identity column or a primary key or not. So I really just can't make that assumption, at least not until I've seen more. So we have a room type, and then we have a price per night. Price per night. That, if I'm using any type of currency, I try using decimal, at least in SQL Server, I try using decimal 18.2. Now you may be asking yourself why I don't use money, why I don't use float. My answer to that is I have been burned before by both float and money due to rounding issues. I've worked in many organizations where the transactions are of cents. Fractions of a dollar or fractions of a euro, whatever currency you want to use. And rounding is always an issue with money and float. That's just the way it's been for me. Oracle's number is okay. You can use a decimal or an integer with that one. That's what I like to use. But in SQL Server, I have been burned by float and money. If you want to, you can go ahead and look up rounding issues with float and money. I'm not going to do that just because I've been burned and I don't want to relive those terrible memories. So I use decimal 18.2. Now I actually work for the finance department of my organization now, and so I extend that to 18.4 on occasion, 4 digits after the decimal. This is 18 digits total, 2 after the decimal. Let's go ahead and assume we're using cents, and we're okay here. But the reality is this decimal 18.2 can be used for any sort of currency, not just dollars or US dollars. Okay, so price per night and room type, both of them are here. Number 4, which guests have stayed in a specific room? Here we go. This is one where it has 2 joins. And right off the bat, I just want to point something out. Room number is now in quotes or single quotes. That's a text field now. So that tells me that room number cannot be just a numeric field or integer field. Room number has to be a varchar. Again, this is only if the person wrote it in a sargable manner. Now, you would say normally, okay, well, rooms are just 101 or 201 or something like that. But, okay, what if there's a penthouse? What if you're staying at the penthouse and it's 101P or P1? I've stayed in hotels where the penthouse is P1, P2, P3, etc. So that's always a possibility. Not only that, but I've also stayed in hotels where it's 101A, 101B. So the fact that I see this in strings tells me this is a text field. It's not just numbers in here. So I want to make sure I abide by that. I'll be generous and use 20 characters. I highly doubt it's going to reach that far, but just for the sake of it, we're going to use varchar 20. Just in case the room number is something like in the Florida Keys and in Vieques, which is an island in Puerto Rico, there's really lack of addresses. There's just names of houses. And so if this is like a smaller resort style hotel, they're going to say you're staying in the, I don't know, Fiesta del Mar room or something like that. So we want to make sure that the room number allows that as well. All right, so we have guest ID already. We have guest first name. We have guest last name. We're just going through these, making sure we have them correct. Reservations. On guest ID equals guest ID. So guest to reservations. On guest ID equals guest ID. We already have that. That's absolutely fine. What else? And then we have another join from from reservations to rooms on the room ID. Here it is, reservations to rooms on the room ID. That's already established, but room number, that's what we got from here, is that room number is not necessarily an integer, so we can actually add it to here too. And because I just talked about this whole thing with room names instead of room numbers, I'm actually going to bump this up to 50. Again, just being generous, just making sure we're okay. All right, so we have our rooms. Is this room types? Yeah, I forgot to label this table. So room types, and let's move on. This one is the one we just did. Okay, we have room types to rooms. And look, we have a new query now that's like the sum of a price per night. So this is basically saying for each room type, give me the sum of the price per night as the total revenue. That's very interesting. Very interesting. From rooms. And then we see the description says get the total room revenue generated by each room type. I would have probably added something like a date filter here to say, hey, how much is it for each, or even group by a month or group by day, something like that. This is a bit of a general query, but it is a query that an executive would want to know, or a general manager of a hotel would want to know, that sort of thing, for maybe a weekly report that they deliver. So, and again, this is AI that generated this code. It's our job to make sure that it's correct. But the fact that it does this, as Morse 314 says, the fact that it even did this is pretty cool on its own. So we're gonna cut it some slack here. We're gonna appreciate what it's done for us already. All right, so we have room types. We have room type here. Price per night we already have. We're really not getting much out of this one. Room type ID equals room type ID. Yeah. Oh, no, we did get something from this one. What did we get? Remember how I said the room type up here? Where is it? Here. Room type. I was a bit nervous about it because of the fact that it didn't have ID. And again, if the person designed this correctly, they would be consistent and say any identifying fields or primary keys would have an ID underscore ID, because these other two did. So now here we can see in this query, we can see that we're missing 2 columns from our ERD. The first one is the room type ID in room types, and the second one is the room type ID in the rooms. So let's go ahead and add that. I'm going to add a new field. Actually, I don't need to here. I'm just going to say room type ID. And then I'm going to see if I can move this guy up. There we go. Just drag it up and we can move it. And now this relationship, we can just throw everything away here, right? This doesn't need to be here. This I'm going to put away as well, because now we know that there's a relationship between these two because of this inner join. So what I'm actually going to do is add a column here. I'll name it room type ID, and I'll move it up slightly, and we'll use that to connect to room type ID, again removing the relationships because I'm just not sure. So we'll change this, we'll change the crow's feet to none so that the relationship is just blanked out. I'm no longer uncertain about this line, so I'm gonna make it solid again. And there we are. Now we have a room type ID and a room type ID, and both of these match up. It no longer joins on room type, it now joins on room type ID, as we can see here. Now the interesting thing is the rooms have a room type, and that's also here. Normally this column would just not exist if we're dealing with like a data warehouse. It would not exist here, it would only exist here. If you wanted the room type, you would just join to room types, get the room type name, which I assume is what this is, some sort of description. But maybe they're just trying to have it here. What this opens the door for is inconsistencies between these two tables, and then you have an issue with your data. So just be careful around that. But again, we're just telling them what they have. They asked us, hey, can you make a schema based on the queries that you see? And we are doing that right now. All right, moving on. We have reservations. We have a reservation ID. So let's go back to reservations. We have a reservation ID. We have a guest first name, guest last name. Ooh, here's an F. What's this F? Feedback. So this is a brand new table, feedback. Let's go ahead and stay here, and we'll bring it back down. We'll call it feedback. Brought a copy of this table down from our template table. Here it is, it's feedback. And let's see what columns we have. We have feedback text. I'm gonna go ahead and add this as the second column. Why the second? Well, because I've seen 4 tables already that have the same, a column that's called the same as the table, just with underscore ID. I'm gonna go ahead and make the assumption that feedback has a column called feedback ID. I might not even see that. I might not even see that in the rest of these queries, which it looks like feedback is no longer mentioned here. Oh, maybe once here. But I've seen enough. In the 4 tables that I've made so far, I've seen enough where I can almost confidently say I made this assumption because of the consistency I saw with the existing tables. I gave this a feedback ID. So this is the first time I'm going to write a column name without actually consulting the queries beforehand. I'm just going to go ahead and write feedback ID. If they question me about it, that'll be my reasoning, because I saw 4 tables prior to it and it seemed like the right thing to do. I don't know how I would feel about that as an interviewer. If someone handed me back an ERD and said I made this assumption, I would probably let that one slide, because they're right. If they have a reason like, hey, I saw 4 tables already with it, I assume that's just how y'all do things, so I did it. I think that would be passable in my opinion, if not encouraged. I don't know. It would depend maybe what type of coffee I had that morning. I'm really not sure. But I'm going to go ahead and do it as an interviewer and an interviewee. I feel confident enough to do that. Just, if you can read the room somehow, I know this sounds kind of silly, but if there's any chance you can read the room and the person's a bit relaxed, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and do it. All right, so enough talking about feedback. We have reservation ID, first name, last name, feedback text down here, which we have a feedback ID. This, because it's text, I'm just going to go ahead and say varchar now, or nvarchar actually. For those who are not aware, varchar and nvarchar, they just allow you to add lots more characters. Suswagon, I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, so I'd rather not. Can I call you Sus? Sus. Thanks so much for following. I really appreciate it. I hope you are enjoying the content you see, at least laughing at me. If you would like to laugh at me, that's absolutely fine, as long as you don't laugh at each other. I'm absolutely happy. Hope this is beneficial for you. Hope this is helping you out. And yeah, hope you're having as much fun as I am. I don't know. So here, feedback text. Feedback text is an interesting one, because I know when I've seen Yelp reviews. Have y'all seen Yelp reviews? It's like 1 billion characters to say like, oh, you know, they forgot my fries or something like that. So I want to give these folks room to be able to store large amounts of text. Now, nvarchar in SQL Server has a maximum of 4,000. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that. If they ask me to justify it, I will say it is because I've had experience with feedback. I know, you know, folks will type in War and Peace into that feedback column. And so that's why I allowed 4,000 characters. Anything more than that, you can switch it over to varchar 8,000 or just do max. Anything varchar max, text even. But a SQL Server is, as Brent Ozar likes to say, SQL Server is probably the most expensive place you can store stuff like you know, large feedback in. So let's do a little bit of limiting, and let's just say, hey, the database will only take 4,000 characters, or the database will only take 8,000, something like that. But definitely lots more than 20 or 50, whatever we were seeing earlier. Again, I've also worked in the hotel industry, so I know how large feedback can get. All right, moving on. Feedback, reservation ID here, okay? So we have a reservation ID column with an F. Again, it's the F. And this is not something that's in the select statement, but it is in the join. And so we know we have a join between reservations, R, and feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and put the reservation ID here. Reservation ID. I'll give it whatever type I put here, big int. I don't have to wonder anymore. I just use big int. And then I'm going to move this column up to the second one. This will allow me to create another relationship between reservations and feedback. So here, I'm going to drag from reservation ID over to reservation ID. Again, I am not confident in the relationship style. I assume that one reservation can only have one feedback record, but they might allow you to have just an open feedback, right? Where you just say, give us your thoughts, and then just type in your reservation number. That would mean that I can actually type in my reservation number multiple times if it's not sort of controlled. So I can't make that assumption. I'm going to go ahead and remove the relationships or the crow's feet entirely. And that's how I'll justify it. Well, I'm really not sure if you allow for multiple reservations multiple feedback entries for one single reservation. So that's why I decided just to not really carry that relationship out. I'm just going to say it relates to each other, and that's all. And here we can see we have a little bit of a cross. What I like to do in Lucidchart anyway is I like to right click and go to document settings, and in the lines I'll be able to show line jumps, and that way we can see here, this is actually, I know about this from my circuit analysis days when I was going to school for computer engineering. In our circuit analysis, we had to draw connections between them with this little line jump here. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I found that in Lucidchart as well. So now we have our join from reservations to feedback, and it's on reservation ID. And again, here it is. Just to lock it in, again, I see reservation ID with no single quotes. That tells me numbers only. So I was right to, or based on the queries they gave me, I was right to pick that. All right, and then we have a single like solitary table here, amenities, that just has one column. But again, I'm thinking, I'll go ahead and add amenities. I'm thinking their style is just table name underscore ID is the identifying column. So I'll go ahead and do that. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just use this post-it note here and say, for the following tables, ID column was assumed based on what I saw in the other tables, table structures. And then here I'll say, what was it, feedback and amenities. That way I can just be very clear and say I went ahead and added an ID column based on what I saw. That'll get it out of the way. That's absolutely fine to give them context so they don't even have to wonder. And it also shows a conscious, that you were conscious about it, right? That you were cognizant about the fact that you were making that assumption. It's way better to let them know that you made it versus them asking after the fact. Maybe it'll encourage them to give you better queries going forward, or give the next people they interview better queries. All right, so amenities has just amenity name. Oh, actually I did this wrong, right? Amenities ID. Or should it be, it's singular, right? So amenity ID. That's probably better. Okay, and then this, I'm not gonna assume the data type for it. I'm just gonna leave it like this. At the end, I can just fill in all the types that I don't know with like unknown, and then maybe in parentheses text or something more general than a specific data type. All right, so we have amenity name as well. Amenity name. That, because it's a name, I mean, it's got to be a varchar, right? Let's do 100, just in case it's like purple television with Bluey playing on episode 7, about 45 seconds in. If that's an amenity, I want them to be able to write that out. Please don't ever do that. If you stay at hotels, they don't like it. Or they might think it's hilarious and just make sure they get it perfectly. I don't know. Could go either way. I don't work there, so I've only worked on the data side of it. Sus, thanks so much for joining. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to not say your name correctly. Sus says, hey man, I just joined a few minutes ago. May I ask what you are trying to design the schema for? Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to ask any question you want. Again, this is just a casual stream. I'm testing lots of different stuff. I'm on, let me put it back over here. I'm actually on my sim racing rig. I just finished to record a video. Let me see if can I pin your message? Oh my God, finally it's working. This is great. Okay. Akasi, how you doing? It's great to see you. Mind if I lurk around? Of course, please feel free to lurk. Thank you so much for the lurk. It's great to see you. I hope your little one is doing better. I know she was a bit sick, and so I hope she's doing a lot better this weekend, a week later. Thanks so much for stopping by. So yeah, this is my sim racing rig. I've had this one for a while, and I'm just testing different angles. I'm testing OBS to see if OBS is doing okay. I recently switched from Streamlabs, so far it's been going really well. Right about now, Streamlabs would probably be freezing on me, and you'd probably be noticing some lag or something. I'm also testing, I don't know if we'll see it, but I'm also testing my different camera angles, including my pedals. My pedals are pedal cam I recently installed, and so hopefully that works out when I do sim racing. But yeah, sorry, back to your questions. So says it does seem to work. Yes, I'm so thankful, because paying that much for Streamlabs and having it just crash on you randomly is really, really frustrating. So with a free tool like OBS, and have it just be simple and not bloated and work, I gotta give a huge thanks, and maybe it'll let me shout it out to LAS Curry. If you haven't checked out LAS Curry's channel, he does lots of YouTube videos on Streamlabs, on OBS, and watching his videos really encouraged me to make the switch, to set it up, all that good stuff. So I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. Akazi says, better, thanks. One tooth is out, another one is on the way. Hashtag father's life. Yes, I do remember those days. Also being recognized as someone with decent skills is news of the year. Akazi says, OBS is great. Yeah, it absolutely is. My daughter, I don't know if I said this, but my daughter recently got braces on her top teeth, and so it's been an experience for me as well. She is having not such a great time with that, but she's handling it like a trooper. So thanks so much for being around, and I hope she feels even better. I know teething itself is not great, and then losing teeth is not great. So yeah. Glad to hear she's a little bit better. Sus, your question. I'm so sorry. I'm having a good time chatting here, so I apologize. But what am I doing? Well, basically, I saw someone on Reddit, and they asked a question that said, I got a request from an interviewer or from a company or something like that. I can't remember if it was a school exercise or an interview question, where they gave them about 10 SQL queries, select statements, and they asked them to design the structure of their database based on what they saw in the SQL queries. And that's just something I've never seen before. I've been in the data space for 13 years. I've been interviewing for about that long. I've also been an interviewer, because I'm a data team manager and architect, etc., for about 6 years, and I've never asked that question. And so I'm going to integrate it into my future interviews. And I just wanted to kind of demo how something like that would look, and how my thought process is around it, in case that becomes something that's really popular in the future, right? Like, I want to show folks how I approach it, how it comes along, and how I solve it. So it says, wow, that sounds like a bottom-up approach. Exactly, right? All my interviews, and again, I have to say I pride myself on the interviews, because I get really good feedback from the people who are being interviewed. What I do is I give them a CSV file. I ask them to import it into SQL Server if they're comfortable. I then ask them to create a view. I ask them to create a stored procedure, get it ready for a reporting platform, and then I ask them to make a report about it in either Power BI or SSRS, whichever one they feel most comfortable, or whichever one's in their resume. And then we talk about it. We talk through it. It usually takes about 45 minutes, nerves and all that stuff. But my interviews are barely ever discussing resumes. immediately get to work and we talk through it. Basically, it's a group project and I want to make sure that they can fit in well with the team. While we're working through this project, I want to make sure that their thought processes is aligned to mine, that sort of thing. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, it's absolutely a bottom-up approach, and I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's absolutely a great approach, and I'm super jealous of the person that thought about it, because it means I didn't. But now I'm gonna steal that. That's mine now, and there's nothing that person can do about it. I'm just gonna take it. All right, so let's move on. Amenities. Amenities is the last table we created. And we have the feedback one. Where's the amenities? Right here, right here. Seth says, I'm new to Twitch, a fresh grad, just honing my tech skills. And man, I love your energy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. I think I will spend more time here from time and time again. I really appreciate those kind words. I try to make... I'm very fortunate that I happen to get paid for something that I'm passionate about. This is what I like to do in my spare time. I know it sounds very sad, but recently, about a year ago or so, I was in a position where I said, okay, I can either learn stuff to become an aspiring data scientist, right? Grow in my own position, or I can stop, take a pause here, and focus on helping others get to where I am or get to where they want to go. And I chose with my time, I'd rather help folks out. I'd rather get them up to whatever level they're comfortable with. And then once that's well established, then maybe I can take a stab at data science, which is again where I aspire to be. But I'm at the point where I've been in this for 13 years. I have about that long of experience, and I want to make sure I can share that knowledge, because technically when you share stuff, that means you have more room to learn other stuff. So I found Twitch as a great outlet for that. I'm sharing it whether you like it or not. I'm going to be here sharing it, and I just want to give anyone the chance to discover whether it's something that they want to do without actually having to try it for themselves. And if you do end up trying it, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible to follow along, right? All of my videos regarding data analysis, they are step by step. I work a lot with Power BI. You can check out my YouTube channel. Let me see if I can pop my socials here. You can check out my YouTube channel, and it has replays of my Twitch streams. Basically, I use Twitch to record videos and then pop them over to YouTube. And you'll see a playlist called Data Discoveries there. There's where I basically take reports from start to finish. I take huge inspiration from Bob Ross, where he started with a blank canvas, and by the end of the Joy of Painting episode, you would get a full report, or a full painting, sorry. For me, you get a full report. Mine take a lot longer than 30 minutes because Bob is a wizard and I am not. And so mine are about 2 hours, but I have chapters in there. I allow you to go at your own pace, basically. So yes, any questions you have, please feel free to ask. You are not interrupting, I promise you. Again, this is just a pretty chill, hopefully pretty chill stream, where I want you to be open with any questions that you have. All right, amenities is covered. We're good there. Rooms, that's covered as well. So says, thanks, man. You are very welcome, and thank you again for following and just for hanging out. I appreciate. You have plenty of things I'm sure that you could do on Saturdays. There's plenty of channels on Twitch, and I appreciate you being here. So rooms is good. Room type ID is covered, I think, right? Yep, there we are. Feedback is covered too on room ID. Ooh, wait a second. That's not the same thing. Feedback we joined on reservation ID first. And now it's telling us that there's another query from room types to rooms to feedback. What does this query do? It gets the average rating for each room based on guest feedback. That's super interesting. Okay, so there's a couple things to unpack here. Number one, feedback. There's a new column here now, rating. So let's first add that column. And what do we see? We see an average function on it. Now, average immediately tells me it's what? Numeric. I can't average good, bad. You know, the word good, the word bad, the word it was okay. I can't give an average of that. That's what a rating system, let's say 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, etc. 0 to 10, 0 to 5. And so I'm just going to go ahead and say the rating is what? Not an integer. I'm going to say it's a decimal again. Maybe 5 digits, maybe 3 digits total, with 1 being after the decimal point. So decimal 3-1. And that's a really weird decimal indicator for, what's it called? I think it's scope and something else. Now it's going to stay forever, so I'm going to say t-SQL decimal. And just look up what a decimal, what those two things after the parentheses are. I think it's scope and precision, scale and precision. Yeah, I promise I have lots of experience. I promise. Scope and precision. So the scope and precision, that's a really weird value to have. Usually I'd have something like 10.1 or 10.2, 18.2 for really big numbers. This just tells me 3 digits total, and only one of them can be after. So this is something like 100.0, 100.5, 100 which would just be stored as 100.0. So that's why I chose that. Again, I can defend that one. If you're not super comfortable, just use a default decimal like 18.2. You can never go wrong with 18.2. Some people like 10.2, I think, something like that, 10.4. If you like radios. 10.4, no, okay. So we are going to have the rating here. That's an average. I immediately want to use decimals for that, and that's covered. And then feedback now has a room ID. That's an interesting one. That means another column. I'll go ahead and add that. I'll call it room_ID. And the type, I'm going to look for it to be the same as the room ID's type. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to leave them blank for now. But now we have feedback joining from rooms as well. So I'm going to move the feedback table a little bit farther to the right. And then I will say this room ID joins to this room ID. Now, again, just for the folks who have joined us recently, you will see crow's feet notation come on by default here. I am going to remove that crow's foot notation because I don't want to make any bad assumptions. I'd rather make no assumptions at all than bad ones if I'm not, 99% sure. So when I write back to the person who's interviewing me, I'm going to tell them I did not use any crow's feet to indicate, one or many, one to many, many to one, many to many, etc. Because I didn't want to assume that each room can only have one feedback entry. Again, for me as an interviewer, I would appreciate something like that rather than a false assumption. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these crow's feet here and here, and it's just going to be a simple line showing I know these two columns connect, I know the tables connect using these two columns, but I can't be sure about what the relationship is. That's okay with me. All right, let's make sure that we got everything we need here. Room type, rating. There it is. Room type, I still don't know the ID. I'm assuming it's going to be an integer, but I can't be sure. Reservation ID was, but there was something that was like a room number. That was not. So I just can't. Not yet anyway. All right, so rooms, room type on rooms, and on room types. Is that good? Room type. See, they're joining on room type ID, which is good. That means we identified the correct join. And then feedback on room ID equals room ID. That's good as well. Okay, query 8 is good to go. All right, query 9. we have guest, and then we have a brand new table again. Brand new table, and that table is called loyalty program. That's where we see loyalty program as LP, or just loyalty program LP. That's the alias. So let's go ahead and grab our blank template, which is right here. And let's add loyalty program. Now, as someone who has dealt with loyalty programs before, because again, I did work in the hotel industry, I worked for an organization that rhymes with Barwood, I guess you can say. We had a loyalty program there, and for us, it was tied to the guest or the customer, but sometimes it was also like linked to the room because it was a different type of loyalty program entry for it. So let's see what they chose. Yep, they chose the guest, which is absolutely fine. So we're gonna put this right underneath amenities. Why? Because, oh no, we're gonna put it right beneath reservations, actually, right here. Why? Because we want to show the relationship between guests and loyalty program. So here, we're gonna again make an assumption called loyalty. This is an interesting one because this is like loyalty program ID, and this is more loyalty program ID would almost indicate that this is like a description table about different loyalty programs. Normally, I would name something, if I was designing this database, I would design it something like guest loyalty program or guest loyalty. That way I could say, hey, this guest has this loyalty program, that sort of thing, and here's how many points they have, etc. This loyalty program, and again, it's because AI wrote it, right? We asked ChatGPT or Bing to write this for us, and so since you joined recently, I want to give you the prompt that I gave it. I'm going to put that in chat. You can feel free to put that in Bing chat. You can feel free to change hotel industry to like cars or hospitals or restaurants, whatever you feel like changing it. So this loyalty program table is a little bit weird, but we'll go through with it. Here I'm just gonna say LP underscore ID, and then I can write a note here saying I chose LP ID because loyalty program ID wasn't the best fit. We're not gonna say it was a poor choice or something like that. We don't want to offend anyone. We'll just say it wasn't the best fit. So it says it was on my mind for a while. Thanks for sharing it. Of course, I'm sorry I didn't think of that before, but I'm glad I remembered so that you can have it too. And again, you can ask it for 10 tables. You can ask it for 20 tables, however challenging you want, or just at the end you could say, can I get some more? And it's absolutely fine to give it to you. So that's a great thing about AI, is that it'll just keep giving you stuff. It may not be perfect, but it'll keep giving it to you. All right, so loyalty program. You can tell, like at the end here, I was just getting tired of giving me queries. It's just like, just come up with the table or something. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so we have an LP ID, and then we saw on loyalty program, it joins to guest on the guest ID. So LP has a guest ID as well. So we'll add that there. And the guest ID, did we ever get the data type? We did not. So we're just gonna go ahead and add the join from guest ID to guest ID here. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and just remove the crow's feet. They're not necessary. They still indicate a relationship, and that's okay. You'll notice that this is just one line coming out of guest ID. I like to keep it that way because it keeps things compact, and you can tell right here that guest ID is the same column going to both reservations and to loyalty program. It is perfectly okay. It does not have to look like this. In fact, this looks weird, right? It just looks strange. It's perfectly fine to save space just for design purposes for it to have that. I thought I saw it somewhere else too. This one, I wouldn't do that. That's just weird now. They're not the same column, so you want to make sure that this is a good offset, but not the other one. The other one, they're coming from the same exact column, so that's really okay here. Okay. All right. So do we have anything else? Oh, look at that. We have a points balance column as well. So you can tell this loyalty program table is about the guest and their status of the loyalty points balance. If I was like ambitious or daring, dare I say daring? It's probably the wrong place to be talking about being daring in data. But hey, here we are. This is all theoretical anyway. And it's free. Did I mention you're getting this for free? I'm going to give you some insight here. And that is, if I wanted to try to impress, I would probably put something like a column that I thought of, like, oh, maybe a status, a points status, or a loyalty status, or a loyalty tier. Now, that may backfire on you, and they might go like, yeah, we don't handle that there, we'll handle it somewhere else, depending on how many points you have or something like that. So it's better to remain on the side of caution, like err on the side of caution and not do that. But if you're feeling ambitious, then hey, why not go for the gold, which can be one of the points statuses, gold or platinum or something like that. I will stop and I will get back to work. I apologize. All right, so we're going to loyalty program. We have guest ID, we have loyalty points balance, guest ID, or sorry, first name, last name. That's good. No new columns here except for points balance and the loyalty program. And here we are, our last query. We have guest, we have reservations, we have, that's it, just guest and reservations, first name and last name. That's already done. I don't see anything new here except the reservation ID. Okay, this is just finding out which guests have booked multiple reservations. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, having a count of reservation ID greater than 1 if we group by the guest first name. This is a weird one to group by. I would probably just have grouped by the guest ID and not the first name or last name, because no, I guess they can only have one entry for the guest with first name and last name, so that's okay. I guess they just wanted to show the first name and last name in the select statement, so that's why. That's okay. But usually when I'm doing group bys for like duplicate counts, I try to put that in a CTE first, identify the IDs, and then use that in like a where exists clause or a where clause that says like, hey, show me all of the reservations for this guest ID. Because here it'll just show you the guests that have multiples. It's not going to show you the actual multiple reservations. If you want to see the multiple reservations, you would have to change this to say to have it be a where clause in another one, in another query. So okay, I think we are good. The issue here is amenities was just added like out of nowhere, right? Like I don't see amenities anywhere else, not in the room type. There's no join. There's nothing like that. So this would be one where I would have to, again, based on the queries I got, I would say, hey, I didn't find anything that I could join amenities to, so I just kind of left it off on its own. And again, maybe they will change their questions going forward because they realize, oh no, maybe they used ChatGPT or Bing to generate their questions and they didn't check them correctly. I'm not saying I would ever do that, nor you. You would never do that. I know you. And there's no way you would just blindly take anything ChatGPT or Bing says. But just in case, just in case someone does that, then maybe they'll change it from now on. Okay, so I'm gonna tell Bing Chat, hey, the queries didn't allow me to see any relationships between amenities. Can you add 1 or 2 queries that'll show me relationships? So let's try that. The queries you provided are great. Thank you. We got to get that out of the way. Again, if the robots come and they take over, I'll be the guy that said, great, thank you, wonderful job. I'm not trying to give it a participation trophy, but the reality is 99% of this stuff was perfect. I'm just asking for one more thing. And again, I'll be alive when the robots come. All right, queries you provided are great. Thank you. Can you add one or two more that will show a solid relationship for the amenities table. So it says gotta be on the safe side. Absolutely. You never know. You never know. I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. So we gotta have the respect there. Okay, so it kind of did this whole thing. It went ahead and just added a brand new table called buildings. And that's all well and good, but buildings doesn't relate to anything either. So now I'll be a little bit more direct with it and say buildings doesn't relate to any of the prior tables either. Can you ensure the tables relate to the other ones you gave me above? Let's see what it says. I feel like I'm at that, like the guy in the Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory movie where he's like, I'm now telling the computer exactly what it can do with a lifetime supply of chocolate. Okay, so amenities, we're back. We have it now. Okay, so there's reservation amenities, and then amenities. So there's like a linking table. Buildings is kind of out of the question again. Buildings is just gone. I don't see buildings anymore. So we're just gonna forget buildings ever existed. It never gave it to us. Yeah, we'll just forget it existed. We'll instead add this new reservation amenities and then amenities table. So the amenities table, I'm gonna move off to the side a little bit, right here. And now I'm gonna add something called reservation amenities. I'm gonna use this template table, paste it right here, align it with the second one, and say reservation amenities. And we will say that this table is based on reservation ID, which it has, and amenity ID. That's really all you need, right? It's just a linking table. I think it's called a bridge table as well. I just used the term linking table. I've used it for many years. I think Salesforce has its own name for it too. Yeah, whatever you feel like using is absolutely fine. So I will say reservation amenity ID, just to have a unique value for this table. Again, we can do that because we assume it, or we're inferring it based on the ones they did give us. So that is justification enough for me. Let's go ahead and move this off to the side. There we go. Reservation amenity ID, and then we have reservation ID, and we have amenity ID. Amenity ID. Now, another reason I like to have its own identifying column and not just two is because it helps me identify duplicates a lot better. I feel like I just dropped something, but I'm not 100% sure what that was. It allows me to have its own kind of duplicate detection system. Why? Because I can basically go into reservation ID and amenity ID and find anything that's duplicate and use reservation amenity ID, which I'm gonna say is a big int and technically would be the primary key, let's say, or the unique key. I'm gonna say I'm using that. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a post-it note saying added reservation amenity ID to be used to, and then reason one, identify dupes, and number two, maintain integrity. That's just a fancy word we use in the data industry for we don't want the data to be messed up. Pretty much. I'm trying to prevent disasters and people getting like double paid on stuff. And then I could just link it like this. All right, so reservation ID, we're gonna use that. to link it, here's the reservation ID coming out. And we'll link that to this reservation ID here. Oh, nope, wrong one. There we go. Again, let's get rid of the crow's feet. We don't need those. It's not like we have a job interview or anything. No, that's exactly what this is. It's for a job interview, isn't it? All right, so we have reservation ID. And now we have to link it to amenity ID as well. So amenity ID, there it is. And let's remove the crow's feet. None and none. And now we have our diagram. I'm going to go ahead and level this out. So make this the same as that. We're going to go in here and clean up the lines a little bit. Get rooms to be up here. Lucidchart does really well with alignment, so I'm very happy about that. We'll delete this. Here we have room types, and now we can just adjust the levels here as well. What I want to do is just move this guy. What do we want to do? This guy down a little bit? Yeah, let's keep that down. We'll bring this guy down, bring this one up, this one down a bit. We don't want it to be too messy, but we also want to establish some order here. And this one can align with this one. Does that all line up? Yep, it sure does. Okay. This is just me being picky. All right, so now you're at the point where you've established a clear relationship between all of the tables that it's asking you for. Here I would normally add, just to be a little bit more professional, I would take, if I was turning this into them, I would just take like a square. I would wrap all of this up in a square, right click on that square and say arrange send to back. And the only reason I'm going through these motions is because, again, Lucidchart is a free tool. If you want to go to lucidchart.com and sign up, this is 100% free. Again, only up to 40. I'm not sponsored by Lucidchart, nor I'm just a paying customer who likes their product. And so you're able to create the same exact diagram. So I want you to be creating the same exact diagram as I am if you wish to. I'm gonna go ahead and add maybe like a light blue here, and then I will give it a title. And then I'll ask ChatGPT what is the name of this database. Oh, actually, did it add anything here? Like amenity name? Nope, it already added amenity name, checkout date, amenity name, check-in date, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's good. Amenity ID, first name, last name, guest ID, reservation ID. Okay, these are all columns that are absolutely fine. We already have them in our diagram. Okay, so I'm just going to add a title here. And what is the name of the database? And it's almost like it lost all of its memory. And it's just like, yeah, it's just a database name, and it just gives me the definition of a database. Let's try that again. Let's try that again. What is the hypothetical, if I learn how to spell hypothetical name of the database that you just gave me queries for? Says AI supremacy. Absolutely. They know what they're doing. And then it goes like the whole, oh, my apologies for the oversight. It's like it knew all along. I just forgot. I was having pizza or something is what it's kind of telling us. The hypothetical name of the database I provided would be something like Hotel Management DB. Okay, there we go. That's not a bad name. I'm not sure. That's like saying, ATM machine or something. Hotel Management DB. Everyone knows that's a database. But hey, why not? You know what? Now that I think about it, I used to put DB in the names of my databases. So it's like it knows me. It probably does, considering, they look at all your search history and stuff, I'm sure. All right. So Hotel Management DB, and then we say schema or schematic. And that's it. we have our ERD. Says it sure does. You never know. Absolutely, absolutely. That's why I only search for database stuff on Bing Chat, because you know, if I said something like, what does my 11-year-old daughter want to do? Then it'd be like, oh, remember that time your 10-year-old daughter had braces? Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Where's my tinfoil hat? I don't know where it is. I'll make sure I wear it next time. All right, so we have a diagram. It has all the tables we need. That one last part we were talking about at the beginning, which is the types. So we can see here, guest has a guest ID, first name and last name. I'm gonna go ahead and remove all the fields that are still blank, right? So that's first. Let's clean that up first. Okay, room type is still good. Is there anything that's blank? Right here, amenities is still blank, so we'll remove that. All right, so we're clean now. But these types, they never gave us enough information. Guest ID, yeah, you would normally say, yeah, that's an integer. Or an identity column if you're in SQL Server. But I just don't, that's an assumption I don't feel comfortable making. So I'm not going to, and I'm instead going to say unknown, and I'll say int, something like big int. If they're successful, maybe big int, because success means lots of records. Is there anything else? No. Guest ID, same thing, unknown, big int. I guess that can be 2 lines. Let's just stretch it out a little bit instead of doing that. There we go. Okay. Anything here? Ooh, lots of stuff. I'll say again, unknown, big int, room type ID. Did we ever get anything? No. Let's just copy that so it's a little bit quicker. Room type ID. This could be, oh, maybe if I learned to spell unknown, it would make me more credible. Unknown. Big int. There we go. Nothing less credible than misspelling unknown. There we go. And now we have, I'll just say the room type. I'm not sure, but I assume because there's a room type ID, I assume this is text of some sort. So I'll just say unknown text. Oh, not that one. Room type here. The room type ID in the room types table, that's going to be an unknown big int as well. And they can ask me, hey, why big int? And I can respond, you know, kind of in their favor, saying, well, I assume you're very successful, you have lots of rooms or lots of room types, so I wanted to make it a big number. And they'll be like, yeah, that's really nice that you're complimenting us, but for someone to have like 1 million room types is kind of silly. So use your best judgment there. If room type ID is better served as just a number, or if you just want to be very general about things, just say number instead of saying big int or like an assumed data type. Just be very general about it. Let's go back here and just be very general. Ruin number. Oh, come on. Why is it doing this whole crazy thing? There we go. Now it's making me switch these over. I'll switch that. I'll switch this guy so it doesn't run into each other. This big int here, again, same thing. I'll just say number. I'm glad we talked this through because it convinced me not to make that assumption. Okay, so unknown text, feedback ID, again, unknown, and number. We'll stretch this out as well. And what I've been doing this whole time is just moving that blue background. So I bet it's like super misaligned. Yep, there it is. Okay, let's move that back. And we'll make this the same size as that one below. We'll make this one the same size too. This is missing one more type, room ID, same unknown number. This is missing the last parentheses, which is something I do so often, just so often. Unknown and number. And reservation ID, same deal here, unknown numbers. All over the place. Unknown number. That's really long, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make this a little bit smaller to the left. Find this arrow, and there we go. Okay, amenity ID, same thing, unknown number. Okay, then we have my notes here off to the left. You know, we could just make a small box here that says something like observations or notes, like that. We'll say send it back. Did I say send to back? No, I said send backwards is what I meant. Send item backward and then send it backward again. Now our notes show here. We'll stretch it out slightly for this third one to fit. There we go. And then we'll give it a small title. A happy little title. If I can channel one of my idols, Mr. Ross, a happy little title that says observations and notes. And then let's make this one, would it make sense to make it yellow, or they won't stand out? How about this? Green, maybe red if you so desire. And there we are. We have our, oh nope, maybe we not are. We can go ahead and remove this and just focus on this guy instead. And there we are. Now, if you're in Lucidchart and you're done and you want to export this, all you have to do is go to File, Export as a PDF, and then it'll actually allow you to either share the link with someone else, or you can just download it. So I'm going to say maybe later here, and it'll allow me to download this as a PDF, and look how nice it looks. You could just download it, and it's going to be called blank diagram because I didn't save it. But luckily, because Lucidchart is a cloud app, it doesn't matter that I didn't save it. I can access this on my phone anytime. I can access it on my iPad, on any browser that you want, just because it's a cloud application. So I'm going to say this is ChatGPT database exercise 1. Why 1? Because I really like how this went, and I think it would be good practice for future streams that we just take one or two streams every month. Hopefully I could get a little bit more frequency going, but I think this would be a good exercise to do once in a while. If you notice, we have not opened up SQL Server Management Studio or Oracle SQL Developer or even Power BI, and that's pretty surprising for me. Most of my data streams are at least Power BI. So the fact that we didn't open it up, this shows that you can do SQL exercises like this without ever opening a database. Now, if I wanted to create this database, I do have a video on my YouTube channel. Let's go to youtube.com/@ Nope. Is that, will it let me go from my website to YouTube? Yep, this is my website. For some reason it went there instead. This is my website. If you scroll down, you can go to the Catch Me Live on Twitch or YouTube section and just open up YouTube. And hopefully it doesn't autoplay and blast music or blast my voice. I'm sure you're already tired of hearing my voice anyway, so hopefully it doesn't blast my voice on. And that's a very long time for YouTube to take. Okay, if you go to my playlists and sort of data discoveries, no, you can search for fake, is it fake data? Okay, there's a video that says SQL data analysis, how to create fake test data with Oracle Live SQL. This is a full tutorial on how to use Oracle's Live SQL, also free, 100% free, as long as you create an account, to create your own tables in the table structure and how to push data into them, fake data. You can tell it to create 500 records and it will do so for you. So you can use that tutorial and basically take the same exact schematics that we just determined here to create an entire database and then populate it with data, even run select statements, store procedures, views, all that cool stuff without ever having to install Oracle, download Oracle, or anything like that. It's completely free and it's completely online. So that is one suggestion I would have. But yeah, I really like how this went. I really like the exercise itself. I think it helps us think of different scenarios. I think it helps us really get our mind going, and it's a really nice change from the standard thing, which is like, oh, here's a database diagram, give me 5 queries that'll insert data from here to here, or fix this query. And when you look, it's like a semicolon that's missing, and semicolons are optional in some database platforms, so it's not really that great. I thought I had a good thing going in my interviews where, again, we take a data from flash drive that you found in a parking lot to a full-blown report. But this is a whole different level of interview question, and I think it's a really good one that we managed to get it done in 2 hours, even though I blabbered on about random stuff. So I think it's a really good exercise. Morse314 says the reverse engineering is why this is necessary. I really do think so. I really do think this is just a really cool approach to try to change things up a little bit. SQL itself has not changed for a really long time. If you don't believe me, Miller Lite SQL Server. This is a commercial that Brent Ozar told us about in like a couple years ago. I can't even remember when it is, but if you search for SQL Server Miller Lite, I'll put a link to it right here in the chat. This is a very old commercial. As you can see, Bill Gates is like super young. And somehow they joined forces with Miller Lite, as one does in the database platform. And it hasn't really changed that much. Of course, they put new features out every year, and more database platforms, including open source, have come up. That's really cool. But for some folks, it's really hard to remain passionate, to remain excited about data and database platforms itself. But I think this is a really cool twist on things. I'm very jealous that I hadn't thought of it myself. Sus says, we'll watch the fake data video on YouTube tomorrow. It's midnight here where I am. I'll be looking forward to more such streams. Wow. Please go get some rest. I'm very appreciative of you being here, but I want you to be well rested. So please head on down and get some sleep. I will be doing a stream tomorrow. It'll probably be in English. I might do a Spanish one and an English one tomorrow, or maybe just a Spanish one tonight and an English one tomorrow. But tomorrow it will be on 5 steps to start your very first database project, and through Power BI as well, through SQL Server and through Power BI. So I'm pretty excited about that one. But I was so excited about this interview question that I wanted to record one and again test out my different cameras, which, as you can see, is no longer working. That's fantastic. So I'll switch back over to this one instead. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the follow. I really appreciate you being here. Morse314, thank you so much for being here as well. Akasi, I'm glad your daughter's feeling better. And thank you for stopping by as well. Again, tonight I'll probably be on maybe doing some sim racing because I really want to test my pedals, or my pedal cam. And again, for those who don't know, I use sim racing to collect data, telemetry data, which I then make Power BI reports about. If you're curious about those Power BI reports, you can go to my website, sqldevdba.com, and go to Power BI demos. I have Power BI demos where I demonstrate how to take sim racing data and put it into Power BI, Formula One, those as well. So it says tomorrow, when are you hoping to get it started? Also, please mention your time zone so I can set a reminder. I wish to watch the stream. I will send you a whisper. I'll send you a whisper, but just know that you can always go back to Twitch and see my VODs. They're also on YouTube. So you can, oh, that camera froze too. Oh, fantastic. It looks like all of them are froze. Thanks so much, Morse. It looks like that camera froze too. Let's see if we can get another one going. Oh yeah. Nope, they're not happy today. How about the pedal cam? Hey, the pedal cam is still working. That's pretty cool. I'm glad that's working. But yes, Sus, thank you so much. I will send you a whisper with when I plan to head out. Moore says no big deal. Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm glad it's at the 2-hour mark. It must be my PC instead of Streamlabs, so we'll see how that goes. But thank you so much to all of you for showing up and for hanging out with me. And it'll be on YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, sorry the camera gave out, but that's just how it goes with live streams. So I will see you all next time. Thanks so much for hanging out, and have a great day.